Welcome to another exciting episode of Unraveling Intellectual Property with Michael Stein. Today, I am privileged and honored to have Jen Beckage of the Beckage firm. I've known Jen, fantastic attorney. I've known her for about 10 years or so, ballpark. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm so honored to be here. Like you said, I've known you for a really long time, and it's always great to chat. I love our conversations.
Just a very brief summary. Jen has a BS from the State University of New York at Buffalo and a JD from the same school. She is included on the 2024 Law Dragon 500 Leading Global Cyber Lawyers and was named the 2025 SIA Women in Security Forum Power 100 honoree. Again, thank you. Why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about your firm, and then we'll get into the subject matter.
Sure. So I started off in technology. I used to own and run a bunch of tech companies back during the dot-com era. Sold one of my companies to a publicly traded company that kept me on as an executive. During that time, I realized no lawyers knew tech, and so I pivoted into law to become one of the first data security lawyers. And I was, grateful enough to start working on the very first data breaches in our country and related class actions. So my firm really focuses on that incident response, right? So a company has a data breach, helping them stand back up again, honor legal obligations, litigation. And then we spend a lot of time working with companies on compliance. So complying with AI laws, privacy laws, security laws, contract negotiations, training, things of that nature.
Okay, I mean, you sure cover a lot. We're not going to be hitting all that in this podcast, so viewers, relax a little bit. We just picked a couple of selected topics. I thought that privacy would be a good one. What are some of the hot issues in the area of privacy and relating to cybersecurity?
Well, I think the first, I don't want to say it's a hot issue, but I think an issue is that a lot of people don't understand that privacy is different from security. Too often you hear this phrase, data security and privacy, and it's sort of lumped in together, kind of like this broad definition of AI, right? So we have to kind of break it apart. Data security is about protecting information from unauthorized access. So those security controls in place, putting data in a safe, if you will, right? And locking it up. Where data privacy, it's sort of a new concept in the United States. It's been around for a long time in other countries. It's about individuals having rights to their information. So the closest thing we really ever had as a comprehensive privacy law in the US was HIPAA. So we all know that we can ask our doctor for our medical records. We can correct our medical records. We can take our records and move it someplace else. So those are the types of rights that are under privacy. Individuals making a request to a company, and it could be your employees, it could be a customer saying, I want to know what you're doing with my information, who you're sharing it with, how you're processing it, or I want you to delete it or return it. And in the United States, over the last 2 years, seen a huge uptick in privacy laws at the state level. So the US does not have a comprehensive security law, and we don't have a comprehensive privacy law. Much of this is driven at the state level, or very specific, industry or data specific laws like HIPAA.
And what kinds of information are we talking about? Every single type of information, or particularly social security numbers and health? Like, what's the limits here? Anything?
Yeah, it's very broad. The definition of personal information under privacy laws is very broad. So it doesn't have to be just a social security number or a driver's license number. It could be more granular about, IP addresses collected or how that information is shared with a third party. It could be your address. So there are more things under that definition where under traditional security laws, information that needs to be protected is usually limited, right? It's social security number, driver's license number, a full account number with like an access code, things like that. So very much broader under privacy. And so some of the hot issues, to answer your first question are how do we implement privacy controls and safeguards and be able to respond to individuals' privacy requests. They're called DSARs, DSAR, a data subject access request. How do we build that into our organization? How do I even know when I receive a lawful data security access request? And how do I respond to it? And what do I need to do? Because there could be fines and penalties, there could be litigation surrounding this. And so, building that in, it doesn't meet one for one with data security laws. It has different defined terms, right? There's different obligations. And so, even from a governance level, who's responsible for it? Is the CISO who runs security also responsible for privacy? Does that go to compliance? Does it go to the in-house legal department? Who handles that? So we see a lot of issues around oper, you know, operationalizing this and governance. Who's going to be in charge of it?
Well, I mean, does like every single business have to be concerned? Does a law firm have to be concerned? I mean, what does this touch upon? And then I assume that you're involved in getting people up and running and compliance, or it's such a huge thing. Is there any boundaries to this?
Yeah, great question. Typical lawyer answer, it depends, right? Most companies and law firms should be concerned if their state has a privacy law, and they're operating in states where there's these privacy laws where they may have data subjects, individuals that might be able to make these requests. So companies have taken different positions. I don't want to do a state by state analysis. We'll just comply with all requests. Some do, take the position we're only going to respond and address them when we have a legal obligation to do so. So you really need to check to make sure you understand what laws apply to your organization and what those laws require for you to be able to have a lawful response to those requests. So again, typical lawyer answer, it depends.
And so, like a firm like yours, you can handle like everyone in everyone's states, or like
Yeah,
the.
so we help advise on that risk management. We put together policies and practices, and it's not just United States. If a company is doing operations in other jurisdictions that most undoubtedly have privacy laws, you may have to think about lots of different jurisdictions, and some of them may not be one for one, right? Every state, every jurisdiction has their own nuances. So we help to put together policies and practices and programs to be able to address those privacy laws. And then you also have to think about your own contracts with third parties. So if you're sharing this information with third parties, if they receive a request, how is that going to be handled? Are they tossing it to you? Are you letting them respond? And if so, how? Because you're passing on that legal obligation. You have to think about insurance. Does our insurance, cover if we have a privacy incident? So lots of considerations.
I guess for attorneys, you have like for legal malpractice, you have to have that included.
Yeah, for attorneys, we don't just think about data security and privacy. We do have to think about our ethical obligations as well. So it does create some additional nuances. And again, not everything is identical. So you could have a situation that's very unique based on a specific jurisdiction or a specific ethical requirement.
And I know Europe in particular has a very strong data privacy laws. Is that correct?
Yes, they really sort of set the benchmark for, what does data privacy look like under the GDPR? And the GDPR is in the EU, applies to the EA, and then the UK post-Brexit also adopted a substantially similar version of the GDPR. And here in the United States, many of the states that have adopted privacy laws really pull from a lot that is in the GDPR. So I'm often asked, well, if I comply with the GDPR, that I'm complying with all of them. That's not the case, unfortunately. Every jurisdiction has their nuances, and those nuances can be really important. It could be what you put on your website as far as disclosures and notice and transparency. It could be the timing in which to respond to requests and what should be in the request. So, unfortunately, it's a new and emerging area that has a lot of compliance obligations with it.
And I take it that you get involved with the people's websites, people's contracts, and All, and then even internally, how they store the data and all of that stuff?
Yep. And I always like to work on the websites. I used to own a web design company back in the
Oh,
day. So, it's close to my heart. But, there is a lot of trouble that can happen on websites. We have less brick and mortar businesses and more that are purely online. So, your privacy policy, your terms and conditions of use, you may have additional notices that you have to put on your website. ADA website compliance, persons with disabilities need to have the ability to navigate your website. These are all issues on a forward-facing platform that can pose risk. So it's an important piece, and we definitely assist clients from a legal and technical perspective on that.
what are just a couple of states, or can you generalize that, or have like the strongest privacy protections?
I always like to say New York has always, in my personal opinion, been the strongest for coming out with the strong security laws, and California, the privacy laws.
Yeah.
So, the very first really groundbreaking data security law in New York was the DFS cybersecurity regulation that applies to businesses in, finance and insurance. Broad definition right there. And then California came out with the CCPA. Again, the very first privacy law, lots of states modeled after California. So I always feel like the two kind of go to battle on who's going to be the leader in those states. But then we have other nuances, right? So, I think there's a lot of people that want to kind of put the flag down saying, I got this and I want to be the leader of it. But I think New York and California are usually the two.
Okay. All right. Well, let's keep it at this for the part one. In part two, we will be discussing, I think, litigation and I guess what happens when things go wrong. And of course, AI, which is what everyone's talking about. Everyone, thank you for tuning in to this episode. Part one, I'm speaking with Jen Beckage of the Beckage firm.